I still can't believe I'm a part of this movie. It still freaks me out every day because I'm like, I grew up with this franchise. I feel like each movie was such a significant part of my childhood. I mean, I remember just watching Toy Story 1 over and over and over and over again. And it's just such a weird, like, full circle moment to be here and part of this iconic franchise. I can't believe it. It feels like a dream. I play Officer Giggle McDimples. She is the tiniest toy to ever exist in the Toy Story universe. She is probably about this big. She's 1 inch tall, and she sits on Bo's shoulder. That's kind of like where her stomping ground is. And they're best friends. They kind of like are yin and yang, and they found each other because they were both these kind of lost toys. And she is so full of life. She's brutally honest. She will say exactly how she feels, and she has a pretty iconic laugh. But she's like a drill sergeant. If Bo is the leader, then Giggle makes it all happen. The new characters we have are so legendary. I mean, just to be able to be in anything with Keanu Reeves is insane, because Speed was another movie that I would just watch over and over again and obsess over Keanu Reeves. I mean, I met him today and I was just like, hello, Mr. Reeves, how are you? And he's just the nicest person on the planet. He plays Duke Kaboom, which he's hilarious because I think they make him this very like cool like Canada guy who's got his motorcycle, and he brings a lot of his like Keanu energy to the role, which I think is so awesome, and his like different poses as Duke Kaboom is so funny. I think it's so amazing to have so many strong female characters being brought into this franchise, because I think what's really cool about Giggle is that she's so tiny, but she's completely unafraid to say exactly how she feels. And I think for someone like me, when I was really young, I was incredibly shy, and I didn't speak that much because I was really, really kind of afraid of the outside world. And I think this character shows, especially young girls, that even if you feel really small in a big world, you can use your voice and be powerful and make an impact. And I mean, she inspires me all the time. I'm like, I don't know if I should say this. And I'm like, what would Giggle do? Giggle would be like, whatever, this is my opinion, and I'm gonna say it whether you like it or not. So I think it's so completely empowering and exciting. It's an immersive experience. There's nothing like going live to theater, and I think a movie like this especially is conducive to it because it's already an imaginative world, so you want to feel like you're completely thrust into this place and you're out of reality. And another thing that was cool is I was able to go to the live scoring session of the movie, and with Randy Newman leading a 150-piece orchestra, and they would, play the scene as they were playing live, and Randy's conducting, and I was like, this is a moment in history that will never be repeated. And you see that, and you just understand why this movie is what it is, because from everything about it is just so special.
I play Bo Peep, and when last we saw Bo Peep, she was, and she had been given away, and so she has been lost for many years and separated from, many of her other friends, and then she's found. There was a whole team at Pixar who was put on. It was called Team Bo. And they wanted her to be modern, and they wanted her new look to suggest the experiences that she's gone through. And it's been like 7 years or something like that. So they wanted her to, she's a little, on the outside, she's a little the worse for wear. But the journey that she's been on has really made her wise and strong, and she's great. Woody is trying to find Forky, who is a new character that's being introduced, who is a beloved, invented toy that is Bonnie's favorite toy now. And so, because Woody is such a good guy. for he gets lost and he goes trying to find him. Gabi Gabi is also a new toy for us, and she's a lost toy, and she has handled her lostness with not as much grace as some other toys have, and so she has qualities that are not model behaviors, let us say. A new character for us, a good friend of Bo's who she employs to do some fancy things. He's a Canadian kind of stunt toy, and you know, all the toys have wonderful specialized things that they do. You know, like how they use Slinky when they need to get out a window or something. Well, Duke has a motorcycle and Duke does stunts, so they need Duke. He's a lovely person. That's kind of can be said across the boards for the guys there, but Josh especially. And what a difficult thing to step into the director's shoes on these, because there's so much riding on these, and everyone so far has been a masterpiece. And it is, I mean, the day before I saw the film, I was going through all kinds of like heart palpitations, because I thought, oh my God, am I going to be the first actor to like ruin a Pixar movie? Because of course you think those thoughts. And I'm sure that Josh was in that mind times 10,000 million, because it's his baby, every aspect of it. But he's just a lovely, lovely human being. And so he knows the heart of things. And it's just, hey, he's done it again.
I play Gabi Gabi, who starts off sort of seeming like the villain, and she's a 1950s doll who had a dysfunctional voice box her entire life. So a child never wanted to play with her, and of course a toy's entire purpose is to be loved by a child and to love a child. So Gabi Gabi lives in an antique store, has her whole life in a curio cabinet. And Forky and Woody are off looking for Bo. And Woody sees her lamp in the window, so goes into this antique store. And there aren't a lot of toys that come and go into this antique store. So Gabi Gabi comes across them with her henchmen, which are these wonderfully creepy ventriloquist dolls that sort of wheel her around in her little stroller pram. And she befriends Woody and Forky right away. And she notices quite quickly that Woody might have something that she desires. Here's the thing. As creepy as Gabi Gabi is, it's all very, very wonderful to me because I love antique stores. I always, as a child, wanted a ventriloquist doll, and my parents would never get me one. So later in life, my husband finally got me my ventriloquist doll, and it is in my office, and I love him so very much. So when I came in to do the voice, they were showing me this animation, and I said, you guys, this is blowing my mind. You have no idea. This little doll has red hair and blue eyes and hangs out with weird ventriloquist dolls. Like, she is me. Except for, hopefully I'm not as... Maybe I am misunderstood. Maybe I'm really misunderstood. I think all the Toy Story films bring up a sense of nostalgia in us as adults, and for children, the sense of wonderment, of always wondering what your toys were thinking when you were sleeping or when you were at school, that they have this real life that's going on. And to imagine that, you get to bring that up in the film. And for adults, it's the nostalgia and the adult humor that's mixed in so that both adults and children can enjoy it. Josh Cooley directed this, and he did such an amazing job. He had such a clear idea of who these characters were and what he wanted, but was also collaborative and wanted to play. But it's a big deal to come into the Toy Story franchise and be the new director, and I think he just did it with such confidence and like such a clear vision that it made me feel really, really comfortable when I was in the room and felt like I had a really safe place to try things out and nothing was wrong, and we could just have a lot of fun, and I really appreciated that.
There's only one reason to make a movie, and that's if you have something to say or if you have somewhere to take the characters. When we started thinking about this idea, and it was Andrew Stanton who kind of first pitched this idea of there's more for Woody, right? That there's more to tell here. Academically, what Andrew had pitched was something along the lines of Toy Story 3, because it had a great ending, and a lot of people said, oh, that's the ending. I mean, even my parents were like, that's the ending. And Andrew's kind of answer to that was, no, that's the ending of Andy's story. You know, Andy he's not the protagonist. He's sort of the external plot. And that was a great ending for him, but Woody, he landed on his feet certainly, and it was a beautiful kind of piece of storytelling, but it's not the ending. And just that foot in the door of what if you could take Woody and show him in a new world, show him with a different challenge. Duke is, well, you know, he's a motorcycle stuntman, so he's full of bravado. But, you know, if you remember those toys, not to knock on any specific toy, they didn't quite do the jumps and wheelies that I remember in the commercials or that we did. So we thought, what if we played up that? What if we dramatized that? And poor Duke is kind of all front, he's all talk. He's a posable action figure, so he basically just hits poses all day while he's talking to you. But when it really comes down to it, he never could do what was in his commercial, and that's really heartbreaking and tragic to him. And so if it ever comes up, he kind of melts like butter because he was never able to do it. In fact, poor Duke Kaboom had one kid was named Rajan, who opened it up on Christmas Day and did one jump, and when he fell flat and it wasn't like the commercial, he turned his back on Duke. So Duke, on one hand, he is the most bravado, kind of macho, tough guy, and on the other hand, he's just a softie, because his kid never really played with him, and he can't stop crying about it. So he takes a lot of coaxing to get where he needs to be. Forky is he's new to the Toy Story world, and he's new on many levels. We kind of think of him as he's new in the world, he's new for the characters in the movie, and he's new to the audience. He's our first handmade toy, right? So Forky is something that Bonnie makes at her first day of kindergarten, and just a little spork with googly eyes and pipe cleaner, whatever she's got there to make them. And you know, you've seen kids do that. My kids certainly do, where they'll make things. And so he's this challenge to us because we thought, well, if you made a toy, would that toy be alive? And so Forky's our answer. It turns out the answer is yes. If you are a kid and you love the toy you make, that's a toy. And this is all new to Woody and the other toys. What's cool about Forky is he doesn't know the rules of being a toy that Buzz and Woody and, you know, Bullseye know. You know, to flop down on the floor when anyone walks into the room. So he's actually quite dangerous because he doesn't know how to behave. And we think that was a lot of fun. Josh is effortlessly funny. He's got great sense of story and character. He's a great writer. I mean, he crafted some of the great scenes in the film Up. I worked on that film. And he was the head of story on Inside Out. And then he directed Riley's First Date. So he's had this kind of natural progression of coming up under some of our big directors and heads of stories and writers and so forth. And so plugging into Toy Story, which he cares deeply about, made perfect sense. He loves these characters. And I also think he loves them, but was also not afraid to take it somewhere new. And that was, from day one, what was important to us, that we wanted to honor Toy Story, but give it a little bit of a different flavor, a little bit of a shift, you know what I mean, a little bit of its own lane. And so Josh was instrumental in creating that. Music is huge, and Randy, we wanted Randy to score this film from day one because, well, obviously he scored the first three so beautifully. There was something about the music that came up early because people, you know, there are a lot of people at Pixar that are working on this film that said things like, oh, that was my first movie. And that song is the first song I remember. Like, the music and the song, Got a Friend in Me, I think helped, well, it's just part of the fabric of Toy Story. So we couldn't imagine it without Randy. What was cool, obviously Randy is an American treasure. So working with him has just been a great honor. And what was cool about it was, he, like the actors and how we feel about the film, he didn't want to just come on and do another Toy Story. He wanted to shift a little bit and adjust. So as we talked about the story and the characters and where we were going, he just organically started thinking about the music a little differently. And I think what he's done is created one of the great scores where it's rooted in the sort of the history and the grammar of Toy Story musically, but somehow tonally shifted. I mean, his theme for Forky or the music he plays under Gabi Gabi, they feel completely new, and yet somehow, in the world, how he does it, I'll never know, but sitting on the stage and hearing that live, those brought us to tears at how beautiful it feels. So it's just a huge, it's as important as the visuals to us, that piece of it.
So this story begins in where Toy Story 3 ended, which is the toys have been given to Bonnie from Andy, and we start right there. It was one of the reasons that I got excited about this film was what's next for these toys. They've been given to Bonnie. It feels like the story's over. I thought it was over. And it wasn't until we kind of dug in and said, what's next for these guys? And we started finding these great little moments to explore, and it started to build into a story that was worth telling. I was, as a first-time director, pretty intimidated to work with Tom Hanks. How can you not be? When I pitched him the film, I got to about the scene where Woody is in the backpack and he helps get the supplies in front of Bonnie, so she's building Forky. And he went, okay, you got me, all right. And that's when all of a sudden I could relax, because okay, Tom's in, I got him excited about it, and I can see he was invested. He's Woody. He's been Woody for almost 30 years now or something like that. So he knows the character so well. He knows the world so well. It was a joy working with him. He almost directs himself because everything he gives you is gold. It becomes an embarrassment of riches. It's like, what take do I not use? So it was so much fun working with him. Absolutely loved it. When I pitched this film to Christina, and I told her more about Gabi, and I told her there's a lot of ventriloquist dummies and it's kind of creepy, and she went, oh, okay, this sounds great. And I said, what? And she said, well, growing up I didn't really play with dolls, I played with ventriloquist dummies. And I said, okay. And she said, and also I have a lot of dolls in my house. I'm like, you have a lot of, she said, I have a lot of doll heads in my house. And I said, a lot of doll heads? And she said, what, you mean dolls? And she said, no, just the heads. And I was like, oh, you're gonna be perfect. So Team Bo is a group of artists here at the studio, animators, artists, technical artists that came together to work specifically just on Bo Peep and her kind of return to the big screen. All of these artists were all women at the studio that kind of took it upon themselves to shepherd her, literally, onto the screen in a big way. And they oversaw every kind of aspect of her and made her incredibly awesome. Tim Allen is Buzz Lightyear. He just is. And he comes into a room and it feels like Buzz Lightyear has just walked into the room. Tim has been doing Buzz for 30 years as well, and he and Tom both know what feels right for these characters, and that's something that I relied on that heavily. If they ever felt like, this doesn't quite feel right, I go, well, let's stop and let's talk about it and let's get there. So it was so much fun working with both of them. I was not prepared for how funny Keanu Reeves is. I was not ready for that at all. He's just naturally a very funny guy, and he brought so many gags and so many thoughts that are in the movie. For example, Duke doing all these poses, that was his idea. He came and met with us early on. Before he was even cast, he came and was talking about the character, and out in our atrium, he just stood up on the table and started posing and yelling, "I'm Duke Kaboom!" And I was like, this is hilarious. This has to go into the movie. And so I'm so glad he is in this film, because that is him on the screen.
Being in a Toy Story film, yeah, it's I mean, again, I think I have to speak to the technical and then to the characters and then to the ambition of storytelling. I think the excellence across the board that the creators and all of the, both technically and in the writing, the performances, it's really, world class. And the heart from the films, the sensitivity, the inventiveness. So to be able to play a character and be a part of that world, when I received the invitation, I was like, wow, cool. And then when I met everyone, I was like, oh, okay, this is why they're really great, And then to have the chance to have such a great character as Duke Kaboom, I was like, wow, this is pretty awesome. So it was a really great experience. Duke is part of this world that we find inside an antique store. And, there's a lot of toys without, friends, without a kid. And, Duke's a part of that world. And all of a sudden, Bo Peep comes back and she's got a friend with her. Who's that cowboy? And so he's introduced to Woody. And at that time, they also have, they need some help, and they're going to they're going to Duke to try and help them, and Duke wants to help. I play Duke Kaboom in the film, and he's a daredevil, a stuntman. He's a toy that he's got his motorcycle, the Kaboom cycle. And he's a character, he's very brave. He's got a lot of heart. He's friends with Bo Peep in the world, and he has a sensitivity to him because he had when he was unboxed in Christmas, Boxing Day, he was, his friend was Rajon, but there was a commercial that said I could, jump the Grand Canyon and all of these things, and he played with a toy, and I couldn't do it. It was a commercial, Rajon, a commercial. And this is kind of his wound. And through the course of the film, which is often the case in Toy Story, there's healing. And it's healing through the friendships, the companionships, the adventure, the task. There's a lot of kind of teaching moments, but also, through character and through love, that wound for Duke is healed, So I love Duke Kaboom. Bo Peep is a rocker. What a spirit. Her kind of can-do aspect and also her wisdom. And that character has, the juxtaposition with Woody in terms of their storylines, the idea of having a kid or what is another life outside of a kid that can also be connected to kids. So that relationship, the way that they kind of play on each other in this adventure to help a toy and to help a kid. And then, she could drive, she can fight, she's super smart, she's funny, I think it's a wonderful character, and it's cool to see the way Bo Peep works with everybody, the kind of cooperation, the can-do, the inventiveness, the never give up kind of thing. And being independent, but also being a part of the community that is with her, around her, and her communication and everything. What struck me was the animators bringing such a physicality and physical humor and timing to all of the characters. There's slapstick, there's comedy of circumstance. Oh no, oh my God, dealing with new situations. And then how the characters, speak to each other is very funny. Buzz Lightyear is just a miracle, Tim's performance in that is just, I mean, it's so great, you know. Da-da-da-da, you know, the person inside me, who? You know, I mean, like, yeah, it's just so fantastic.
I play a character named Ducky, and he is a plush toy that is spent his entire existence, most of his existence, connected to a pegboard wall at a carnival, and he is threaded through it like a small piece of like polyurethane to another toy named Bunny, and they're inseparable. But at the same time, they have been waiting their entire existence to be one, and they've spent their entire existence watching kids get cheated by carnies. and so they have a very jaded outlook on life. And so he's very loyal to Bunny. They bicker. They're like an old couple. They bicker like an old couple, but they have deep affection for each other, which you learn in the movie. But also there's every moment of their life is anticipatory. Everything is, am I going to get one today? Is it? And oh no, it's and then you know, and the other thing about the pegboard is that there's some of the only toys left on the pegboard. It's like they're in the worst real estate, top right corner. You know, and so it's like no one's looking up here at a little duck that was made in Taiwan. You know, so I think he also has some self-esteem issues that he covers up with aggression. I'm part of a duo, and I play Ducky, and the other half of the duo is Bunny, who's played by Jordan Peele. So for those who don't know, we had a comedy show for 5 years called Key and Peele, and we are a comedy team like Abbott and Costello or Laurel and Hardy. And so the dynamic is very interesting. They're very similar in their outlook of the world. They just want to be owned by a kid, but the kid, they don't even have they don't have an opportunity they don't know what they could do to get their chances to be better. I mean, they're carnival toys, you know, the ring toss, it's all fixed. Those games are fixed. And so it's just this existence where they're going, one day we'll be one, or when will we be one? And also the other thing that the one thing that they never talk about is if one of us is one and the other one isn't, then what happens? So it's, so the dynamic is kind of like an old bickering couple. There's a lot of love there. There's a lot of loyalty there. They would do anything for the other one. But at the same time, they get on each other's nerves. You would too if you were connected to another being for your entire existence. I think it's a very helpful message that we learn from Bo Peep, which is that she's made a life for herself. It's not an orthodox life. It's not a traditional life. And yet she's fulfilled. And once Woody and her stumble across each other's paths again, I think Woody starts to see that you could live an untraditional life as a toy. You could be a toy that's out in the middle of a field and gets played with once every 3 weeks. You could be a toy that's perfectly fine. And I think it's a really lovely thing for kids to learn. I think because if a kid, look, we're all looking for safety. And if a kid goes, I'm just going to go with the flock and do what all those other kids do, or or my parents are saying, here's what the culture-scape tells us we're supposed to do, and here's this beloved character in the Disney world that is doing whatever she wants and is thriving at it, and that's exciting. Something that's very funny about Toy Story 4 is Forky's creation and Forky's evolution. You just can't. I was in a small screening room with 9 people, 6 of which I was related to, and 2 of which are under the age of 10. And to see the work that Tony Hale did, the work that the animators do, the work that Josh did with this character Forky, it's fantastic. And takes its time as he's... one thing, it's just so funny to watch him just be on this laser path. Trash. He just thinks it's so funny. It's hilarious and a little heartbreaking that he's like, this is what am I exist? I'm a spork, for heaven's sake. I'm supposed to be used and then thrown away. That's what I'm here for. And I love that he knows that as his purpose. But what's ironic is that he wouldn't know that purpose if Bonnie hadn't infused him with love, put eyes on him and a mouth and eyebrows. And she gave him life to love her, and then he wakes up and only sees himself as a spork, which it's fantastic. Josh Cooley is the director, and I'm so very privileged to have been able to work with him, and I think Jordan would say the same. We just really had a wonderful time. He was sometimes the best thing with the director is when they're open to collaboration and they're willing to put their ego aside for a part of their vision. Now, I think in regard to this film, in regard to Josh's vision, it was what about our protagonist haven't we explored yet? What about Woody have we not explored yet? And I think that without ruining anything, he's really come up with a fantastic idea, which is that I think even Woody, in a way, he doesn't know that he's going through an existential crisis. It's fun that I feel like it's subconsciously happening to him.
It was such a pleasure to have Keanu Reeves voice Duke Kaboom. We went into a casting session where we were trying to choose a Canadian actor to play this role. We didn't know who we wanted, and we actually asked that it be a blind casting session. So our casting director pulled clips on Canadian actors that was a mile long and just started playing clips for us with us not knowing who we were listening to. And it wasn't long before we narrowed in on the voice of Keanu Reeves, who at the time, I don't think any of us knew he was Canadian. But the quality of his voice and the clip that we heard, and I don't know what it was from from one of his films, but it was so perfect just in the confidence that came through in that voice. And so we quickly moved to see if he would be willing to take on the role. We have always been huge fans of Key and Peele, and we started development on this film and started talking about the role of Ducky and Bunny when Key and Peele had their show on Comedy Central. We were huge fans, and we were looking to develop these characters into kind of two best friends and sometimes worst enemies that are literally sewn together at the hands. They needed to finish each other's sentences. They needed to drive each other crazy. And these two guys came to mind right away as some of the sketches we had seen were absolutely priceless. They grabbed onto the role right away and brought so much humor to these characters. We always made sure to record Key and Peele together. That's not typical for us in animated movies. It's usually kind of one actor at a time, solo in front of a mic in a recording studio. But the energy these guys have as they play off of each other and that they brought to it, and the humor and the improv that they brought to these characters was only possible if you faced them toward each other and put mics in front of them. So we got them together whenever we could, and it was some of the funniest recording sessions you could possibly imagine. So Josh Cooley is the director of Toy Story 4, and I have had the pleasure of working with Josh for his entire 15 years at the studio. I was his first manager when he came into the story department on the first Cars, and it's been awesome to see Josh kind of rise up through the ranks of story, becoming a head of story. Most recently, I got to work with Josh on Inside Out. Jonas, Josh, and I were all together on that project. Josh was one of the writers and also the head of story. So when I heard Josh was going to be the co-director on this film in the beginning and ultimately the director, I leapt at the chance of being able to partner with Josh Cooley. He's one of the funniest guys I know, and he brings so much heart and humor into this story. Like Jonas and I, Josh loves the Toy Story characters and understands that they are part of the fabric of this place. And it was clear from the get-go that Josh was going to pour everything he had into making sure this film was the greatest thing it could be. None of us can imagine a Toy Story movie without the music of Randy Newman. I can't even comprehend what that would look like. Randy has been part of the fabric of the Toy Story film since the very beginning. He has written some classic songs through the years from the Toy Story films. He's composed just these beautiful scores. And so there was no question on who the composer would be for Toy Story 4. It had to be Randy. It's been a thrill to work with him. He cares so deeply about these stories and about these characters. He engaged with us on the storytelling in Toy Story from our very first meeting. He has written a couple of new songs for the film that we can't wait to share with the world. But he also composed just a beautiful score that has new themes that go along with the new characters in the film. There's some classic Toy Story themes that are folded into this. The soundtrack of Toy Story will always be Randy Newman, and it's been an honor and a privilege partnering with him on these films. The relationship, and the relationship specifically between Woody and Buzz, is core to the Toy Story films. It's set up early on in the first Toy Story. They build over the years and through the films to trust each other, to understand each other, to support each other. It's such a critical relationship in this series. And in Toy Story 4, we take that relationship even deeper between Buzz and Woody. Buzz is there at the beginning, really compassionate to Woody's new situation in Bonnie's room. He wants to help him in any way that he can when he sees that he's struggling, whether it's being relegated to the closet, or whether it's being stepped on by Dad, or having a handful of Forky to be able to deal with. Buzz is compassionate to him, and we see an exchange between Buzz and Woody in the RV on this road trip, where Woody tries to explain the inner voice that Buzz has inside him, and how he just really needs to listen to that, and that it's important for Woody to listen to the voice that's inside him.
It was good to be back in that world again. And there was, most interestingly to me, there was new characters, new music that was required. There was more of Bonnie in it. And there's other characters who were prominent that were in early and who were important enough to merit a new theme or something, and that's what I did. This picture, I don't say it has more emotional depth than the others, because they all had that. That's really important to Pixar every time. Sometimes during a picture I've been worried toward the end whether it was funny enough. That say, you sure it's funny? And you always had that covered and didn't worry about it. But they did worry about heart, as they called it, or emotional resonance. And this picture has a great deal of that, where important things are happening to people we love and big decisions are made that are surprising. He somehow gets it in his head. He's not real bright. He gets it in his head that he's disposable, that he should be thrown away. So he keeps trying to, jump out of this van they're in and on the highway and throw himself off a cliff and things like that, and throw himself in the trash cans over. And Woody has put himself in charge of keeping him from doing so. So they're in the song, I can't let you throw yourself away. Don't you want to see the sun come up each morning? Don't you want to see the sun go down each day? Why you want to hurt that little girl who loves you so? Her heart would break. If you should go, you should go. Hey, that was in tune almost. Yeah, there it is. So Bonnie, he's Bonnie's main toy, the one she loves the most. Ballad of the Lonesome Cowboy, sung by Chris Stapleton. And it's Woody expressing how he feels. And he feels like he was a lonesome cowboy until someone comes along and changes his world. he pretty much, he said, do this, and I did it. You know, like it's a director's picture. It was the first picture he did, and it's kind of overwhelming, you know, when you're in there and there's a bunch of musicians and someone's conducting an orchestra and speaking in a language you don't quite understand. So it's intimidating possibly, but he very quickly decided, you know, he wanted what he wanted. His instincts about music got better and better as they went on.
Pixar has had a phenomenal success at hitting them out of the park. And I didn't think that 2 could be as good as 1 because one was so complete. 2 broadened it up a little bit. 3 drilled it. And then when Andy said goodbye and the last shot is of us on the porch, which if I recall, that was the last shot of the movie, supposed to be. But again, my memory is that the little girls, Bonnie, saw us. You go, wait a minute, she could probably take care of us. And you're thinking to yourself in preliminary look at it, hey, why not? And then they came up with 4, and it changed many times. The story changed. I only got snippets of it. And of course, is Buzz got a bigger part besides just always watching Woody's back? Woody, look out! Look out, Woody! It seemed to me for a while that's what I was saying, and it's the story they came up with, but in a different variation. And I said, yeah, it was any chance to do. I love these characters. I love playing Buzz. So yeah, I said I was all in. That was a long way to go to say Toy Story 4. Yes. From my point of view, you find Woody's expanded sense of, is it possible to say his expanded sense of real, and Buzz's limitations. In a very funny way, Buzz doesn't have a consciousness, which is probably one of the biggest laughs to me to do it. And of course, I don't get to do this with my buddy Tom, but he's having a crisis of confidence, and he wonders to himself, and he says, I'm just having this, I can't get the line right, I don't remember, but he said, I just wondered to myself, and this voice keeps telling me that I should go after Bonnie or something, and I lean in and go, who do you think it is? It's so Buzz. And he goes, my inner voice. Yeah, I get it. Who is it? Like I can't even fathom another voice in me talking. And Buzz is so linear and so who I wish I was. He was so duty oriented. He's engaged only in one thing, and he finds an inner voice. But it's plastic, and it works for Buzz. I'm nothing without Woody, because he really gave me my personality, because it was what I see no sign of intelligent life anywhere. Hello, ha! That's the beginning of it. My sense of being was created by looking at that cowboy, and I get to bounce off him. In a weird way, Buzz now has to stand on his own 2 feet, and he does. He is who he is, which is great. And Woody also has to expand who he is, which he's a remarkable character, you know, because he's constantly thinking about how it affects other toys, which is a metaphor to me of a person who's constantly concerned about other people. His matter-of-factness reminds me a little bit of Buzz, because he's innocent. So innocent, but he's got a personality tick that he thinks he's trash, because he's literally made of trash out of a wastebasket, so that's where he constantly wants to return to. And his point of view is so fresh for this, because he's a throwaway. None of us were throwaway. We were all bought. We're bought boxes, went to a store, however our creation was. His creation was a little girl made him. So it makes him very special to humans, not so special to himself. And certainly we're open to it. It's a toy. She loves him. He's accepting it. But it opens up a great world of unacceptable things and throwaway items and throwaway toys, but there's still a value. It's a tremendously illuminating plot. I just love where they're going with this. Well, now Duke Kaboom was kind of an emotional problem for me, because when I first heard him, if you got him a little larger, he's kind of Buzz-like. And I told them that, and I told Keanu the same thing, and he thought the same thing. He's going, it's got to be a bit kind of bravado like Buzz. And I said, so he made some adjustments, but he was so kind that he said, I don't want to get into the Buzz world. I says, no, I don't want to be walking through town in the John Wick world, or Neo for the love of God. So he made some adjustments. I read the first draft, and that was good. And then there was a working animation that was almost like, I think, better than Toy Story 1. I mean, the technology, overall, this thing is so beautifully shot. It's so rich. It's almost startling. The hair on the kid's head and it was amazing. Looking at the Bonnie's eyes, it was a lot of it was amazing.
The fourth one will be, please tell me what this is. And it ends up being, I think, just as profound and new as the previous movies were. They keep finding this new kind of reality to examine in the personas of Bo Peep, Gabi Gabi, myself, why I say myself, Woody, and everybody else. And it really has always been a question of, well, what is the logic and what is the theme? And they never cease to amaze me, is that they have that nailed at the very first time we get together and start working on it. Back in the first one, all the toys had a real good understanding of their place at that time in Andy's room. And there was this interloper that came in the form of Buzz Lightyear, who didn't realize what he was. You don't get it. You're Andy's toy, and therefore you got big responsibilities. And here comes Forky, and he wasn't even a thing. He was just this collection of pipe cleaners and I guess some Play-Doh, maybe a little bit, and a disposable utensil to eat pudding with. And he doesn't even realize that he has number one, a consciousness, but also number two, a job. He thinks he's trash. And so it's like Woody has to project onto him. He's got to educate him as opposed to the importance of where he stands. He's got this heavy burden of responsibility, and that he has to, organize everybody. But in this case, he also has to provide a reason and guidance for Forky, who normally would be afraid of everything and throw himself away. He's not up on the rules. He's also extremely edgy. He's like skittish. Everything he sees scares him for some reason, even good things. Lastly, I will say that he is wildly creative and he doesn't really know it. A pair of bendable arms, even though they are pipe cleaners, can really be absolutely anything. And he has more depth to him than he himself even realizes. Bo Peep's interesting is because she has made her peace and she's wise. She's actually seen a way a world works that is, on one hand, completely counter to what Woody is hip to, but at the same time, it's kind of like the embodiment of what Woody wants, which is to be played with by children in order to make their lives a better, more happy place. Bo Peep has been able to discover that somehow, and that's an education process that still requires a number of I don't want to say death-defying, but dangerous circumstances. Which, yes, there's an awful lot of stuff to be avoided. There's a bad cat. There's human beings that are walking around as if there's malevolent Bensons that are trying to thwart them. But once again, Bo Peep is the one who also does in a lot of ways what Woody does for Forky. Bo Peep does for Woody by saying, you're better than this, and there's things that you can do that you're not aware of. Gabi Gabi is that very volatile combination of a sweet voice and a cute demeanor, who has an agenda that is kept as close to her voice box as possible. Beware of anybody who views themselves as being less than anybody else, and needs to acquire something by any means necessary to maintain their status. Let's take the analogy that he jumps motorcycles. Well, his very first jump was a disaster, and so everything, the bike, the outfit, the crash helmet, his entire reason to live turned out to be a nothing, and he's got to recover from that. And what he's missing there is a lot of other guys, a lot of other toys, who help him explain that you don't necessarily have to be as cool as you are in the commercial in order to be as cool as you could be with your owner, with your kid.
There's so many things I love about Forky, and I think while I was doing it, and Josh Cooley, the director, was in the room, I just always had this. He's just a new child. Like he's new to the world, and when you're new to the world, everything is curious, and just so many questions, and also like people doing. It's almost like an alien coming to this planet and being like, "Why are you eating a burger with 2 buns?" Like that's the most ridiculous thing. Like, why are you putting bread on top? It just doesn't understand like why. And to the toys, like, why is everybody dropping to the ground when this large giant walks in? I don't understand how this happens. And so everything is new. He's just so wide-eyed, and he's constantly learning things. One of my favorite things that they've done with Forky, because his design is very simple. It's a spork, it's some putty, it's 2 little popsicle sticks, it's some googly eyes, which is always funny, and these kind of pipe cleaners. Very simple. And the fact is, he's simple. He just walks around and he's just like, what's that? Why are you holding that large metal thing and slamming that nail? Like, what's going on? Like, everything is a question, but everything is very simple. And even to someone like Gabi Gabi, who's like the villain of the movie, he doesn't see her that way. He's always just like, you have a pretty smile. And yet and then like the creepy guys come along, Benson's, and it's like, that's a different story. But he doesn't see her as evil when everybody else kind of attaches that to her. And I love that perspective. I think the tremendous beauty of this is, if you really think about it, he sees himself as trash. And Woody is like, no, you're made for something a lot more. You're made to be loved. You're made to be, to give someone love, to be held. And it's just like, God, like, who doesn't want to hear that? If anybody thinks of themselves as trash, it's like, no, you're made for so much more. I mean, come on. That's a daily devotional right there. So it's like, that's a really powerful, beautiful message. Forky is kind of always wants to get back to the trash. He has to go on this road trip. He's like, I gotta get out of here. And so while everybody is sleeping, he tells me, he's like, I am not a toy. I'm made for soup, salad, maybe chili. That's my purpose. And then I go to the trash. And so he just jumps out the window and he's like, freedom! I don't have to be a toy anymore. And then Woody sees this and then he jumps after him because he knows how special Forky is to Bonnie. And he's like, it's now Woody's goal to get Forky back to Bonnie. And he does everything he can to make that happen. It is so visually stunning. It is stunning. The whole time you're kind of watching this and you're like, I don't know how people can do this. Like, I don't know how this is even possible. Even like Bo Peep's face and how the lighting of the china and stuff like that, you're just like, what? How is this even possible? So the eye candy of it alone is crazy. But then the story of it's like the visual, and then all you always walk in and you're always like, okay, I'm gonna see the screening, and then you're just like crying. I mean, it just the way Pixar takes a story and the highs and the lows and how it just pulls at your heartstrings is really something everybody should experience. There's so many different devices to watch movies on nowadays. I really, having seen a screening of it, I so encourage people to get to the theaters for this movie because
the detail that Pixar has put into Toy Story 4 is astonishing. And I mentioned before, but just like the way it's lit and the way it's shaded, the toys are shaded, just the artistry alone is so beautiful that you want a close up. It would be tough to see small, but it's just like, because it's so fun just to study. So I highly encourage people to see it at the theater.